did you start off in Sydney? You started off in a major city, then moved to the Gold Coast. Like how did you end up where you are now?
How did I end up here? Yeah, that's interesting. So, I mean, I went to university and actually went and did one of the very new human movement sports management courses back in the 90s. And that's where I met my husband now. And I realized really quickly that even though I loved like sport and exercise and all that type of thing, I sort of had this inclination towards the business side of things, sports marketing, policy and planning. I just excelled at that. So I worked in sports, sort of recreation planning. I worked in sort of allied health spaces when I first finished. And I realized that sporting organizations are so much like small businesses. They, you tend to wear a lot of hats that are slightly outside of what you think your position description is. And I think that set me up very well for when we had children. And I thought, I want flexibility. So I love working, absolutely love it. But I wanted flexibility to be there for the girls. And sort of jumped into small business. So the first business that I had little side hustles along the way. I've always had that.
But me both.
The first one, so we sort of traveled overseas. We had 2 little kids and came back and decided the Gold Coast would be a beautiful place to live for us, for a lifestyle.
Were you visiting that a lot, or how did you end up in the Gold Coast? Like, was it a holiday destination?
Well, we actually lived, funnily, my husband worked for an oil and gas company. And so we lived for a couple of years in the Philippines, center of London, Houston, Texas, and then we got shipped out to Aruba. So people are like, Aruba, it's like the bottom of the Caribbean. So we lived there for a while.
Wow.
Yeah, so interesting. And so then when we came back, we sort of had 1.5 kids by then and realized we wanted to be around family. And so I've got family in Coffs Harbour, and then both of us have family all the way up to Brisbane. So we thought the Gold Coast positions us sort of on the coast.
Nice middle ground.
Suits our lifestyle, And then but then we thought, Ray was commuting to Brisbane to start with. And I thought, let's buy a business. And so I found Dining Out. So
was this for both of you, or was this for both of you, or just for him?
Yeah, no, for both of us. I was always going to be firmly a fixture in any business that we were going to buy because I'm probably more entrepreneurial minded than Ray, but both had complementary skill sets. So we bought a business called Dining Out. So it was a restaurant and entertainment guide in 2 locations, Brisbane and the Gold Coast. It seemed fairly straightforward to run.
And where did you find that? Just out of curiosity, where did you find it?
Yeah, so we bought it through a business broker. So we sort of searched online and I think it was Hallmark Business Sales. Yeah, so we bought it for them then, and they facilitated the sale. And I mean, I must say I was a little bit shocked when, we went to settle and they were like, let's hand over all of the IP. So there is a pile of business cards with an elastic band around them, one for the Gold Coast and one for Brisbane. And then here are some back issues of publications. It did have a really good history. It had been around for 22 years when we purchased it. So it had that, solid customer base. But still, the business cards kind of threw me. And so we just, but then, you just jump right in and
did you have
you make it your own.
Field?
I guess working in sport, I'd had some experience in marketing, like marketing, sport and publishing. And that kind of came easy from creating ads and things like that for customers. I was able to do that. Ray handled all of the sales because we had 2 really young children at this point, so a baby and a toddler, and it meant that I could coordinate all the marketing, and Ray would go and meet with the restaurateurs and sign them up for something that was a product that worked. So it really required not a lot of sales because it was a product that had worked for you in the past, and there was little objections, and they needed a good way to get their name out there. Yeah, and that was before there was so much online presence. So
so it was more of a print focus. Yeah. That's interesting. Yes. So when you were searching, were you just searching broad for everything and anything in terms of business wise, or did you sort of narrow it down and say, look, this has got to be able to give us some flexibility because we've got kids, it's got to fit into something that's marketing related, et cetera, or did you narrow down into these are the fields that we want to be in?
It wasn't field-based. It was because my husband has a degree in business and IT. So he has quite good with systems, processes, and yeah. So I think, and I've got probably more creative skills as well. So combining both of those skills together, I was just looking for something that would fit with our family.
Yeah, okay. And just out of curiosity, you don't have to give, real numbers for dining out, but how did you buy it? Like, was it based on a multiple of earnings? Was there a different sort of metric that was, made up the purchase price? Or if you can cast your mind back to that point?
Yeah, that's interesting. So long ago. I think...
Was it asset-based?
If I think...
What was it based on?
Yeah, I'm just trying to recall conversations that we had around that. So we obviously had a deposit, and then we had a line of credit that we had access to. So that's how we funded the business. In terms of how it was valued, I probably couldn't tell you. I think it was based on its profitability.
Yeah, for something that's so established, like if it's been around for 20 years, there must have had been a reasonable income stream and profitability there.
Yeah, and it was consistent. It was consistent, and I remember that the sellers said, we just keep things very, very simple. Just keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate anything. So it was quite easy as a first business for us to buy, to be able to pick up and go, right, this is what it is. And then we did grow it over time. The challenges that we had as a family were that the Gold Coast at that time was an hour drive from Brisbane. So Ray would often, my husband would often drive to Brisbane, and given the nature of the industry, sometimes restaurateurs always didn't show up, even though you'd had a meeting booked in. So he'd drive up there and they wouldn't show up, and then it would feel like his time was compromised and not being as effective as it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as a family, it was it just didn't fit super well with as our children were growing. And what we mean by that is that ideally it'd be great if we networked with restaurateurs, and that meant sort of later nights and going out to dinners and things like that. And we had a baby and a toddler. Also, the other thing was I ended up jumping into photography, because what we found was it was sometimes so difficult to coordinate the restaurant owner with a photographer at a time that was in or outside of their service at a time that fitted in with our schedule as we were going towards production, because we had our print deadlines booked in, because we were printing, in a year we print 200,000 copies. So we had to book that in ahead of time. Our printing bills were $30,000, $40,000 at a go. So we sort of had a deadline that we were working towards. So I would jump in and do the photography as well, but sometimes I'd have to take the children. I mean, the restaurateurs were great with that. They were so lovely with our girls, but I personally felt that this wasn't where I wanted my kids to be at 6 p.m.
So that makes sense. So
in an Indian restaurant in Surfers Paradise. As lovely as the people were.
So was that the tipping point to sort of say, well, let's move this one on?
Well, you froze a little bit. Hello. I'm assuming we'll come back on in a minute.
More an immediate thing. Okay, we're done with this. Let's move it on.
Good question. It definitely wasn't something that we thought through from the start. We bought the business. We were just looking for a good revenue that matched our lifestyle. And I think we just had a moment, where you just feel like, oh, this feels difficult. And so my husband had complained about, he was tired of driving to Brisbane with these restaurateurs. And I, of course, me being a strategist, instantly said, I'll just split the territories. And so he said, how are you going to do that? And I said, just leave it with me. And I did. I kind of identified, I was able to split the business in half in a way, so that I knew that if we were going to present it for sale to somebody in Brisbane, then the databases needed to be separate. The all of the revenue and the expenses associated with Brisbane needed to be identified and separate, so that it would be a clear, really clean acquisition.
Yeah. Was it one
for
magazine?
The buyer?
Was it one magazine across both Brisbane and Gold Coast?
Yeah. So it was branded Dining Out Brisbane and then Dining Out the Gold Coast. So we had two different areas. So we had the product essentially was just Brisbane.
Yeah.
So that was quite easy for us to separate out. It wasn't like I had to split the publication into two new publications. It was already you
already
know,
done.
yeah, so that was great. And we found some buyers. We did use a business broker to advertise in the Brisbane area because obviously it would have been better if they were located in Brisbane.
Mm.
And we found some beautiful people that just shared our values and had the same kind of skill set, and they took it on. And I guess the funny thing was that we went under contract, they did sort of due diligence. And then as we went to, we sort of had the final meeting prior to settlement, and they came to our house. And I remember it clearly because they actually showed up to our house and they had this huge dining out across their car. They'd already signaged their car.
Yeah, wow.
And we sort of looked at one another and said, well, I guess they're going to buy it. So yeah, it was the final handover, signed the contract, and yeah, just supported them in taking over that business. We continued to run the Gold Coast for a period of time, and then eventually we sold the Gold Coast.
Yeah, right. So you sold that separately to Brisbane. You sold Brisbane first.
Yes, we sold Brisbane first, and we just continued to run the Gold Coast. And I just guess you figure out if it's possible, and meanwhile you're still working in the business trying to keep everything running. So and then it was a little while later that we decided to put the Gold Coast on the market and sell that.
Very interesting.
And how long successful in that?
Yeah. How long did the process take from start to finish to sell?
The process it was probably 3 to 6 months, I would say.
That seems reasonably quick.
It was. I guess I really understood what a buyer would want to know because I just put my own hat on and thought, what would I want to know about this business? I knew the things that I found objections the first time and the things that concern me, like the pile of business club. And so I just created a lot of documentation that supported what actually happened in the business so that it was really clear workflows, really good contacts. And remember, it had the history. It's been around for a long, long time. So the buyers had already had seen the publication for years in their area. So I think that gave some reassurance and then just,
100%. It de-risks the deal, doesn't it? It gives them a little bit of comfort that, what they're buying is still going to be around a little while. But I'm curious to know, how did you go about pricing it?
To be honest, we just looked at it was all the financials. The financials kind of gave it a lot of clarity. We relied heavily on the advice of the business broker that we used to determine, evaluation. And, I guess we met the market. So we had improved the publication significantly in terms of its revenue and its operating expenses. We'd sort of brought them down. So it was more profitable. So it was definitely able to be sold as a separate territory. So
yeah, interesting. And did you take some time off after that, or what did you do?
Well, so my husband went back and worked in the corporate sector after we sold both of them. And I think the other thing to mention was the handover. Like, obviously, you have these walk-in, walk-out businesses, but at the end of the day, it was really important to us that the buyers in both areas were really confident and felt really well supported in their transition. So while you might have in your contract a period of time, sort of we just always offered, just contact us, reach out if you've got any questions, and we'll guide you where you can find that information, who you can contact, or I'll help show you what you need to do to be able to develop the skills necessary to do exactly what we've done.
Yeah. So how long did that last for?
I think with all the businesses I've sold, I think to start with, it's like, the first couple of weeks is very intense when you hand over. And then slowly, you end up with, okay, I'm going to go and do this, or I'm going to keep doing this. And then you're going to do that. And you help them step into your role. And then finally they have it all. And then they just start to call you with questions or email you with questions.
And it tapers off.
And then just slowly after 6 months, it's like it's all over to them. But there's not much time requirement, I'd say, after a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And how's dining out doing now?
I believe it's still going, which is great because there was a huge disruption in the market. Just, the world became digital. So they would have definitely had to pivot and create, I would imagine, apps and websites and things like that to support
trends. Yeah.
Then rather than being a print model, it would have possibly been a subscription model. That was a little while ago now. So what I ended up doing in the meantime, while we still had dining out, my children went off to preschool or daycare. And at the time they said to me, you need to make these little sheets for the kids' rest time in the middle of the day. And of course, I whipped out my sewing machine and, as per their instructions, created something that was going to be suitable, and off the kids went. And I sort of realized that there was an opportunity to maybe just do this little side hustle. So I was busy doing that while I still had dining out Gold Coast. That was also back before the world was digital. So it was very hard to connect with suppliers. And I realized really quickly that my kitchen table textile business, was going to take I was so tied to the sewing machine. It was 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm sewing for friends and things like that. And I thought that's not really sustainable. This is not a scalable business. So, I was looking for some suppliers elsewhere.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that business, Jamberry, I'm interested to know, where would you even start with that? Where would you start to say, okay, if I want to scale this thing up, where do I find suppliers? Did you look overseas? Did you look locally?
Well, obviously, I'm sort of like let's be Australian made. So I thought, I'll buy the fabrics and I'll make it myself. I'll employ Australians to sew and other people to help me. But it's just not, when it comes to textiles, even 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't economically viable to get a product to market and for it to be sustainable and to pay tax and GST and all of those types of things. So eventually I had to, I looked at scenarios, let me import fabrics and do it here. I was trying to look at every single way possible to reduce the costs and still be Australian made. But, as most textile businesses go, I ended up finding a supplier in China. But that was back before Alibaba, AliExpress, madeinchina.com, any of those platforms existed. So I remember asking a friend of mine who had a glazing business and he imported glass from China. I'm like, do you know any textile contacts over there? So I would ask anybody and everybody just to try to find a connection. And to be honest, that's how it worked. But it took me about a year to find a supplier because I had emailed somebody and they passed me on to another contact, and it just sort of was this big long chain of
round and round in circles.
Yeah.
So how did it end up coming together? Did they send you samples, or did you send them something and say, look, this is what
that was so funny because I obviously, how it started here was I went to Spotlight and bought fabric and then made the product. Obviously, I went to when I found a supplier, I said, okay, send me your fabric samples and I'll choose one. And they said to me, you need to send us your textile prints. And I said to my husband, now I have to be a textile designer. So, but sure enough, I did. I created some patterns myself and that I thought were, quite universal. I think I sort of thought if I could make something that was beautiful and classic like Country Road, that'd be ideal. Because if you're going to make something from scratch, it might as well look good and be really good quality fabric. So that was really important to me. And then you just start the sampling process. So we posted things back and forward, patterns and samples. But you have to be really, really particular in textiles because if you don't even mention where you're going to put the care label, they will put it in a location that you would think surely not.
I can imagine.
So So you just got to scrutinize every detail, right down to what is the cotton that you're using on the stitching to secure the elastic, so, and then even packaging. Yeah, every tiny detail, what is the care label made of? You think, surely make it out of a soft satin material, but nope. What's it printed with, Yeah, so...
all that stuff would be important, especially when you're dealing with kids.
Yes, I needed something that was going to... Yes, absolutely. I wanted fabrics that were going to be high quality, that were great for kids that had allergies, eczema and things like that. So it had to be, we're talking about sheeting that for babies. So it has to be very, very, very user-friendly. But it also needed to be able to endure the wear and tear because it's in childcare. They're going to wash their sheets every single day. So
exactly. So it's got to last, especially if you're charging a premium price tag for it, or even a reasonable price for it. But how did you scale it up? Did you distribute online?
I started actually Yeah, I started marketing the product to parents because that's how I became a user in that space. I was looking for a product that I needed, and I thought maybe other parents would appreciate that solution as well. Having said that, so I had a website and I had a range and I was getting orders from parents, and then I got an inquiry from a childcare centre, and they said, we'd like a quote for 90 blankets. And I thought, oh, 90, that's quite a lot. I mean, I was able to fulfill the order, but it definitely took my attention to that second demographic. I did still cater to parents, and I knew that I had a very short window. It was pretty much 2 weeks from when they enrolled their children in childcare to before they started. So it was just a very short window. And then the other user group were just directors of childcare centres. And they were looking for, I realised that there was a big percentage of childcare centres that wanted to supply linen for their parents as a service. So
yeah, interesting.
That's where I was able to help them out.
Yeah, cool. And when did you decide to sell and why?
So I had been in that business for about 15 years. I'd been to all the conferences.
Wow.
I, used my publishing background to design a magazine that was loaded with articles that of interest and other products. I got that into childcare centres so that, directors could see other products that we offered. I sort of felt like I took the brand as far as I could. We added extra products over the years, so we had a lot of SKUs. And then I think COVID hit, and I had a small team of people working with me to help facilitate customer service and fulfillment. I had a few health issues, to be honest, and I had not stress related, just separate to that, just genetics, but I had a cardiac arrest. Then I got cancer, and all those things are resolved now, but I just wanted to change. And I thought, I have been serving this industry for a long time. We offer exceptional products. It's really well branded, and time for a new adventure.
Yeah,
I think
makes sense. 15 years is a long time in the industry.
That's right. So I thought maybe it's just time to hand it over to somebody else that can also put their mark on it and, take it where they'd like to take it. And so I thought, time for a new adventure. And I'm not unhappy that that's what I decided to do.
Yeah. And what did that process look like, finding a buyer and going through the sale process again?
Oh, that was so interesting because I think, like most sellers, you think that your business is completely unique and nobody's going to understand the niche that you operate in, because I did have a very specific niche. Unlike most childcare suppliers that offered 5,000 products, I offered a very niche 100 SKUs and in textiles, and we did it exceptionally well. But it was a real niche. And so I thought, who's going to understand this super niche? So I thought, I'll sell it myself. So I went to a listing platform, bsale.com.au, and I thought, I'll just put up an ad. And in that process of listing it, I thought, my goodness, I'm going to get some inquiries, and I want to be really consistent in my response. And there's so much detail that I want to share that it's going to be exhausting to, continually do that over and over again. So I created what I thought was a business proposal. That's what I called it. And it was 26 to 28 pages and pretty much covered the business history, the revenues, suppliers, all of our marketing and branding touch points, sort of how I guaranteed that a buyer was going to get the same revenue that I was going to get. And then, of course, financials, which sort of indicated the discretionary earnings that you were likely to receive if you jumped into Jamberry. I operate things very sort of above board and pretty transparently. And I just eliminated sort of the IP that was, so it would be Andy from China or my Indonesian contact that did our custom made range. I could talk around it without identifying who the suppliers were. And then what I now have realized, they call those information memorandums, but that was gold in terms of inquiries, because people would inquire and I would answer their initial questions, sort of vet them as a bit of a buyer, and then I'd send them that, and it kind of answered a lot of questions.
Yeah,
and it meant
kind of sets the scene, doesn't it?
It does. It sort of explained really clearly what the business was about. And I realized that a lot of people go back and read that information again and again, and they might review it with their partner, and they might read it at 10 o'clock at night when they're less likely to phone you to ask a few questions. So that was very, very, very helpful. And to me, that is one of the most valuable selling tools if you're going to go and decide to sell your business.
100%. I know with my experience with that, I sold a business myself as well. And when I put mine together, I kind of used it to say, well, look, we're setting the scene. This is what this business is about. This is the return. If you're looking at it from a pure return on investment point of view, this is what it's going to be. I can't remember what it was. Let's say it was 3 times from memory. It's like, look, if you're looking for a business that's 2 times, this isn't the business for you. If you want a business that's got good systems, it's got staff in place, it's been there for a while, the marketing plan's in place, it's being executed, and it'll be executed for the next 12 months. This is a solid business, but the return on investment is this. If this is for you, keep reading. If it isn't for you, we shake hands and we walk away.
That's right. That is exactly right. So I think if you're buying a business that is like, we had a really strong foundation. We were super well known in our industry. So we had really good brand recognition and just repeat buyers. And the storytelling is really important because, I might have had a buyer that said, why do you take phone calls with regard to orders? And I said really clearly, because we have customers come back and order $10,000 worth of product in a go, and they'll do it over the phone because they'll say, I want exactly what I got last time. And I don't want to have to navigate your website with all your new products. I just want exactly what I ordered last time. And because the business model was that we would send out a 30-day invoice, because it's a very, very trustworthy industry that we operated in. Childcare centres and early learning centres weren't going anywhere. We would send that out, ship the goods off, and we always knew that everybody paid their invoices. So there was a lot of trustworthy. So we knew our systems, we knew what worked, and by allowing customers to be able to phone us, particularly early learning centres, to be able to phone us and just place a phone order, was a really valuable way to secure income and to make it really easy. I think that was really important. We identified it. We made that process really easy for our customers.
Yeah.
So to be able to pass that on to a buyer and explain why was really, really important.
Yeah. So you've sold again. You've sold your next business. Why? We'll get to what you're doing in a second, but did you take some time off? Like, how did that change things financially for you? Did you decide I'm going to go sit on a beach and drink margaritas for a little while? Or were you just like, look, I've got energy to do something else. I want to step into my next thing as soon as possible. Like, what was that thinking like for you?
Yeah, okay. It's interesting you say that, take a moment. Like I am an advocate to, if you can find some space, sometimes it helps the ideas flow. But on the other hand, I don't like to sit still. Now, maybe that is my health journey. I associate relaxing and sitting still with possibly health issues and recovery. So I'm keen to kind of keep moving. Yeah, we sort of did some renovations at our home, and we've always had a fairly full house. We have adult children. We live on a large property. We all live together, which is great. So I just sort of started to explore what was next. My best friend unfortunately passed away with cancer, and I think that exploring that journey with her and supporting her and her family through that guided me to decide I was going to maybe go back in and work in healthcare, because I'm a very, very empathetic individual as well. So I jumped in and said, I'm going to do a degree in occupational therapy. So I've done a year of that. And at the same time, I thought, I just love business. So I jumped in and did my real estate license with a view to perhaps I would be able to help others on that same journey of being able to buy, grow and sell business. Because I just think that's such an exciting space. And
100%. Agree. I'm not sure I agree with how the licenses work, to be honest. Like a real estate license, they seem so vastly different when it comes to selling a property to a business, but that's a different story there. But so now you've jumped back in, you've joined one of the largest brokerages in Australia. Like what did that process look like? Did you seek them out, or what? How did you come to join Link?
When I started the real estate license, I actually thought, I don't know if there's going to be many roles. And remember, part of my motivations was I want to be working as part of a team.
Mm.
I didn't necessarily want to be a solo operator. I wanted to be around people and to be connecting with people. So that did lead me to keep my eye out for opportunities. And I saw an expression of interest with Link Business Brokers. So responded to that, and I'm delighted to be working with the Gold Coast and Northern Rivers team at the moment. So
Yeah, that's
you can
cool.
see.
So what does a day in the life look like for you right now?
I love it. It's so obviously we get inquiries in, people wanting to thinking about selling their business, and I feel like 90% of people say I don't know what that process looks like. So yeah, that's where I shine. Very happy to have conversations, complimentary conversations that help people explore what that process looks like, some of the things that are important in selling a business. So, people worry about the documentation, they worry about confidentiality. And yeah, I step them through that process, give them an idea of what their business might be worth.
Yeah, that's
And
interesting because that's what most people want to know, isn't it? It's like, what is my business worth? But I tend to find that when I was previously in that space is, sometimes people would leave it too late. They get to a point where they're either burnt out or their, retirement's very, very close and like, okay, I want to sell now. It's like, well, if you want to maximize your value, there's some things that you need to do. But what are you seeing out there in the marketplace?
so what I'm seeing is that you're right. People do come and they say, I want to sell their business, but they haven't really worked with their accountant in the last couple of years to create a profitable profit and loss. Because what happens when a buyer comes along, the very first thing they look at the information memorandum we put together and say, yes, this will fit with my lifestyle. I could be this person in this business. Then the next thing they do is they say, can you share the profit and loss with me?
Mm-hmm.
And if the accountant has had no net profit or no net loss because it's been like a tax, tax allocated savings have been put in there in other ways, then that sort of causes hesitation for buyers. So then I tend to work buyer side and try to help them identify actually what their earnings could be and to point out the discretionary spends and the add backs because a lot of sellers do have personal expenses that get put in or into their business. It's not uncommon for, say, people to claim some of their car allowances, even if they don't require a vehicle in their day-to-day running of their business.
Yeah, so it all comes down to being able to show, I think, that, what you're looking at, is not necessarily what it would be for you, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, coming into the business. Your cash flow is going to look slightly different to potentially what it is here. I mean, it's no different to if I cast my mind back and say when I sold a business, I had inflated my wages when I was working in the business. And it was something crazy like 2 times what it would be to replace me. But that was an easy one to show. It's like, look, this was the most cost-effective way to draw money out of the business. And you can clearly see that if you replace me, you don't have to pay 200 grand a year to replace me with someone else, or you don't have to pay, 25 grand a year in super. That's not a realistic cost. So some of those things there are, in my view anyway, they're legitimate add backs. As long as you can sort of show, look, the business doesn't need, this cost on an ongoing basis to keep the doors open.
You're exactly right, Mark. It is, and that's where I think the business broker can help you identify, because business brokers have walked around the premises of the business or sat typically with the seller to really uncover what are your systems and processes and who are your clients or your customers and how does this business generate revenue. Because pretty much what I say to sellers and buyers is that what you're buying is that guaranteed revenue. That if you do everything that the seller's done, then you should get the same revenue. What you choose to do with that is up to you as a buyer, and you might make changes that are going to improve efficiencies or drive growth, and that's exciting. Yeah, the thing I do find is that sometimes like accountants will point out the cash flow challenges that you could likely face. So that is really important to know, but it can sometimes trip buyers up in terms of whether they're going to proceed or not. And so I think it's just, if you're an entrepreneur and you are buying a business, that remember that it's your decision making. And that's what's so exciting about buying a business and being a business owner to me. It's the power that you have to make decisions and to run things on a day-to-day basis.
100%. That's why we do it. So if you were going to give one tip to someone who's looking at buying a business, which is not an easy thing to do, I was speaking to people on a regular basis that have been looking for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, couple of years, haven't found the right business or have gotten close a couple of times and it's fallen over. Like, what would you say to business buyers in particular, given your experience of buying and selling a couple of times and also now helping people buy and sell? What's one thing or a handful of things that they could do to better prepare themselves to actually get a deal done?
I think the thing is not to get tripped up in the risks, because there's no perfect business out there. And if it is, it's at a much higher price. So you got to trust that the business broker has appraised the business at a market rate based on comparable sales and the industry that it's operating in. And then when you grab it, you got to look at those challenges that you might see or the weaknesses, and you got to look at those as an opportunity, because that's where you get to grow it. And if you grow it, you will make more profit. And if you can grow it, you'll also build your asset. So the value that you could sell it for in the future.
100%. And that's why we do it, isn't it? And like, I have a similar conversation. I totally agree with what you say. You can't de-risk everything, no matter how hard you try or how good your deal team is. That's why we do what we do. Like, if you want to buy a business, there is going to be some risk, and that comes down to you. It's like, if you're competent in your abilities and you've got experience in this field, or maybe you don't, doesn't matter. But if you back yourself, then you should be able to make this work. But there is risk in everything for sure, and that's just part of it.
Yeah, yes, but it is exciting space to work in. That's what I think I really enjoy, working with buyers and sellers, to find that common ground and get people on their new adventure.
Cool. So how can people find you or reach out to you? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you just via the website? Have you got socials?
Yes. Yeah. Sherryn Deetlefs. So I've got Instagram, Sherryn Deetlefs Business Broker, or on LinkedIn. If you search up my name, Sherryn Deetlefs, you'll find me on LinkedIn, or obviously Link Business Brokers.
Cool. I'll put all the links in the notes. And Sherryn, that was an amazing chat. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Mark.
No problems at all.